Ask me anything. What would happen if the internet suddenly ceased to exist? Not slow down, not disconnect, completely disappear. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. You reach for your phone, but nothing loads. No messages, no notifications, no Wi-Fi. At first, you might think it is just your router. Maybe the bill was unpaid. Maybe the signal is weak. But then you look outside. Everyone is checking their phones. People are confused. The entire world is offline. The internet, the invisible system connecting billions of people, businesses, banks, hospitals, schools, and governments, has suddenly ceased to exist. The first few minutes would feel strange, but not immediately terrifying. Most people would just keep refreshing their apps. Social media would stop. No Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, or online games. Everything would freeze instantly. For many people, the first reaction would be boredom. But very quickly, boredom would turn into confusion. Because the internet is not just entertainment. It is part of how the modern world breathes, moves, pays, learns, and communicates. Within the first hour, communication would become the biggest problem. Messaging apps would be useless, and emails would never arrive. People would try calling each other, but mobile networks also depend heavily on internet-based systems and data infrastructure. Some phone calls and SMS might still work for a while, depending on the system, but networks would quickly become overloaded. Families would worry about each other. Students would not receive school updates. Workers would not know whether to report to work. Then comes the next major shock: money. Online banking would stop. Payment apps would stop. Card payments could fail. People who rarely carry cash would suddenly realize how dependent they are on invisible digital systems. Supermarkets and shops would become chaotic. Self-checkout machines may stop working. Digital stock systems would fail, and queues would grow. Even if food is still physically on the shelves, buying it would become much harder without digital payments and inventory systems. Businesses would rush back to cash, paper receipts, and manual records. But most companies are no longer built for that. Banks would face panic. People would want to withdraw cash, but ATMs and bank systems might not work properly. Without the internet, financial markets would be hit almost instantly. Trading, global payments, and digital transactions would freeze. The economy would not simply slow down. It would suffer a massive shock because trust depends on communication and records. Next, transportation would be affected. Flights, shipping, delivery services, ride-hailing apps, and traffic systems all rely on internet connections. Airports would face huge delays. Tickets, bookings, security systems, and coordination between airlines would become extremely difficult. Ports and shipping companies would struggle too. Modern supply chains use digital tracking to know where goods are and where they go. That means food, medicine, fuel, and factory parts may still exist, but moving them efficiently would become a nightmare. Delivery apps would vanish overnight. No food delivery, no parcel tracking, no online shopping, and no instant updates. People would begin to notice something important. The internet is not one industry. It supports almost every industry. Hospitals would still have doctors, nurses, machines, and medicine. But digital records and communication systems could be seriously disrupted. Doctors might need to rely more on printed records, local files, phone calls, and face-to-face communication again. Emergency services would still operate, but coordination would become slower. Finding information quickly would be much harder. Schools and universities would also be affected. Online learning platforms, digital submissions, research databases, and school announcements would disappear. Students would return to textbooks, handwritten notes, physical classrooms, and printed worksheets. Learning would continue, but less conveniently. For some people, this might sound peaceful. No distractions, no endless scrolling, no pressure to reply immediately. But the problem is that society has not prepared to live without the internet anymore. We built our routines around it. Workplaces would be hit hard. Remote workers could not join meetings. Cloud documents would vanish. Shared files would become inaccessible. Companies using online tools for payroll, scheduling, customer service, and sales would suddenly be forced to stop or improvise. Small businesses would suffer too. Many depend on online orders, social media marketing, delivery platforms, and digital payment systems. Creators, streamers, influencers, online sellers, and freelancers would lose their main platforms overnight. Their audience would disappear instantly. News would become another major issue. Without the internet, people would rely on television, radio, newspapers, and word of mouth. But misinformation could spread faster in another way, because people would have fewer ways to verify what they hear. Governments would need to broadcast updates through traditional media. Public announcements would become extremely important again. At the same time, people would rediscover older habits. Visiting neighbors, calling landlines, reading physical books, meeting in person, communities might become closer locally because without online spaces, nearby people would matter more than distant digital connections. But globally, the world would feel much larger again. Talking to someone overseas would no longer be instant or easy. International business, online friendships, gaming communities, and long-distance relationships would all become much harder to maintain. Entertainment would change completely. No streaming platforms, no online music, no quick searches for movies, tutorials, or memes. People would return to downloaded files, DVDs, books, radio, board games, outdoor activities, and face-to-face conversations. Some people might feel mentally healthier without constant notifications. Others might feel isolated, anxious, or disconnected from the world. The biggest difference would be speed. The modern world is designed for instant information, and suddenly everything would become slower. Need directions? Use a paper map. Need a recipe? Use a cookbook. Need homework help? Ask a teacher or library. Need to contact someone? You might actually have to meet them, call them, or send a physical letter. After a few days, governments and companies would begin rebuilding emergency systems. Radio networks and offline databases would become valuable again. People would start printing important documents, keeping cash, writing down phone numbers, and storing information locally. The world would not end immediately. Humans survived before the internet, but modern life would become much less efficient. The biggest damage would come from how suddenly it happened. There would be no time to prepare, adapt, or transfer systems. Over time, society might rebuild a new communication network, maybe not exactly the internet, but something designed to replace it. And this teaches us something important. The internet feels normal because we use it every day, but it is actually fragile. It carries our memories, money, work, education, entertainment, relationships, and even parts of our identity. So if the internet suddenly ceased to exist, the world would not just go offline. The world would have to relearn patience. We would realize that the internet is not just a tool. It is one of the foundations of modern civilization, and that is what might happen if the internet suddenly disappeared.